Is Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal, who sits on the Judiciary Committee. Senator, thank you for joining us. So these are your colleagues, your Republican colleagues on the committee, saying to the Justice Department there ought to be a criminal investigation of Christopher Steele, the author of this dossier. Let me ask you first, the evidence that they say they've encountered that justifies this investigation, have you seen that evidence? Are you aware of what they're referring to here?
I have seen no evidence, none whatsoever, that would justify this criminal referral, and I know of no such evidence. Stunningly and sadly, this first major action by the Republican leadership of the Judiciary Committee is aimed at someone who reported wrongdoing rather than committed it. And very, very strangely, it's apparently based on evidence that the Department of Justice already has and may well have been provided to them by the Department of Justice. So it seems more like an effort to distract from the real priorities, what should be the priorities of the committee, namely looking into obstruction of justice, collaboration between the Trump campaign and the Russian meddling, and even to discredit law enforcement agencies like the FBI.
Because I'm just trying to get a sense of what life is like on that committee right now. Is this something you found out reading about in the press today? Is this something the committee has been discussing? Have Republicans been raising this? You haven't seen the evidence. Are you at least vaguely aware of what they're referring to? Or are you just being totally hit out of the blue with this?
That's really a very, very important point. The fact is, really unfortunately, that there was no consultation and no collaboration, which really runs against the grain of what traditionally should be a proper bipartisan investigation. There has been no real collaboration in this referral. And in fact, the efforts here should be focused on the committee's priorities: the Russian meddling, obstruction of justice, the possible oversight of the Department of Justice, which is our mandate and our bipartisan purview.
Because Lindsey Graham has said, his argument is basically, look, he says he wants Mueller to proceed unimpeded. He thinks there ought to be, ought to be looking here into this issue of Russian meddling. And he thinks there also needs to be some kind of look, some kind of investigation into this dossier, into whether the FBI was relying on what he sees as opposition research work. In terms of the Russian meddling piece of it, do you think the Republicans on that committee are taking that seriously?
There's a really indisputable fact here, which is that the FBI investigation of that Russian meddling and the Trump campaign's collaboration with it was triggered by information completely independent and separate from Fusion GPS or Christopher Steele. We know from excellent reporting that it resulted from information from within the Trump campaign, George Papadopoulos talking to the Russian or the Australian ambassador, and other intelligence sources. So this really seems like a distraction and a deflection of attention.
All right, Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat from Connecticut, a member of the Judiciary Committee, in the news tonight. Senator, thank you for joining us. And as the New York Times reports, when the president was unable to stop his attorney general from